They dismissed a Marine veteran from a luxury car dealership, judging him solely by his appearance. He remained composed, exited silently, and moments later four Navy SEALs entered without a word. What unfolded next wasn't explosive, but it resonated profoundly, far beyond the showroom's walls. It was just after 2 p.m. when Elijah Ransom pulled into the parking lot of Westlake European Motors in Thousand Oaks, California. The day was crisp and bright, unremarkable save for his secret mission. He stepped from his well-worn black F-150, desert dust still clinging to its wheel wells, a relic from service 2 years past. He didn't mind. His boots were scuffed, jeans faded, hoodie stretched. None of it mattered to him. What mattered was waiting inside the gleaming glass showroom. A 2024 Maserati Gran Turismo, pristine white with a rich red leather interior. His wife, Jada, had pointed it out in a magazine 6 months prior, her smile as bright as a teenager's. "It's stunning," she'd said. Elijah intended to surprise her. No anniversary, no birthday, just because. He'd scheduled an appointment with a salesman named Lucas. The plan was simple. Sign the papers, pay in full, have the car delivered home tied with a ribbon by 5 p.m. He walked towards the double glass doors, head held high, mind clear. Halfway across the lot, 2 security guards, one tall and rigid, the other built like a bouncer, approached him. "Sir," the taller one stated, blocking his path, "this dealership is private. An appointment is required." Elijah glanced at him, then retrieved his phone from his hoodie pocket. "I have one," he affirmed. 2:15 with Lucas. The other guard interjected, "We've encountered this before. You need to leave the premises." There was no hint of curiosity, no attempt to verify his claim, only directives, commands, dismissal. Elijah, not one for repetition, remained calm. "You're mistaken," he said, holding up his phone. "I have the email right here." Neither man bothered to look. "We'll call the police if necessary," the shorter one warned. "This isn't a walk-in lot." The way he uttered it made it clear this wasn't about rules. It was about Elijah, about what they perceived. Elijah's jaw tightened, but only for an instant. He'd faced far worse: sand, heat, gunfire. He knew better than to cause a scene. It had never served him, not in uniform and certainly not now. He stepped back. "I'll go," he said. "You might want to inform Lucas he just lost a sale." Neither man responded, simply standing, watching him as if he were a threat. He turned, walked back to his truck and sat behind the wheel for a moment, hands resting on the steering wheel, heart heavy. Then he picked up his phone and made a call. "Derek," he said when the voice answered, "I need a favor." Elijah didn't need sympathy. He needed 10 minutes and 4 men who had never once failed him. Derek answered without hesitation. "Where are you?" Elijah told him. "Just a dealership. Just a car. Just another moment where someone judged everything from the outside." But Derek didn't ask why. He simply said, "I'll be there in 20. I'll bring the guys." Elijah hung up, placed the phone face down on the passenger seat and stared out the windshield. He wasn't angry, not in the typical sense. His mind didn't jump to shouting or destruction. He grew quiet, focused. Years in the Marines had taught him that when people reveal their true selves, you don't argue. You remember. You respond calmly and precisely. Inside the dealership, Lucas, clean-shaven, late 20s, in a flashy suit with a perpetual smile, checked his tablet. His 2:15 hadn't arrived. He clicked his tongue, walked to the front desk and asked the receptionist if an Elijah had checked in. "No," she replied without looking up. "Nothing on the log." Outside, Elijah remained parked in a corner of the lot. He didn't want Jada to know yet. She was home, finishing a work call, thinking he was fetching groceries. She had no idea about the surprise or how quickly it had soured. By 2:33, a black Escalade pulled in. Out stepped Derek Fallon, Braden Knox, Alonzo Marr and Sterling Vance, all former Navy SEALs. Diverse in build and background but bound by a connection thicker than blood. They spoke little, exchanging only nods. Derek, in a slate jacket and jeans, walked up to Elijah's window. "What happened?" he asked. "They wouldn't even let me speak," Elijah explained. "Wouldn't check the appointment. Just said I didn't belong." Sterling clenched his jaw, glaring at the dealership. "Is this some kind of private members-only club now?" he muttered. Elijah opened his driver's side door and got out. "Let's keep it cool. No threats, no noise. I just want them to understand who they turned away. Alonso offered a slight smile. Then let's introduce ourselves properly. The 5 men walked across the lot. This time no one stopped them. The guards were gone, either on break or observing from a camera, unsure how to handle such a group. The doors opened and they entered the chilled, brightly lit showroom. Sleek cars gleamed under spotlights. Music played softly. Lucas looked up from his desk and half stood. Can I help you? Elijah stepped forward. I had a 2:15 appointment. You're Lucas. Lucas blinked, checked his tablet. Mr. Ransom? That's right. Lucas flinched slightly. I'm sorry, no one told me you were here. The receptionist didn't mention I was here, Elijah said, got turned away in the parking lot. Derek slowly surveyed the showroom. Is this your entire sales approach? Blocking appointments before they reach the door. Lucas glanced at the front desk, then at the security monitors on the wall. The color drained from his face. I'll get the manager. He vanished towards the back. Alonso stepped forward, reading the plaque under the Gran Turismo. Beautiful car. She'll love it. Elijah didn't answer, he was scanning the room. A few other employees peeked out of offices, sensing a shift. Then a man in a blue suit appeared, tight tie, high forehead, hair slicked too carefully. His name tag read, Darren K., Sales Director. Gentlemen, Darren said, forcing a corporate smile. What seems to be the problem? Elijah kept his voice even. I had an appointment. I was here early. 2 of your guards stopped me in the lot, told me to leave. Didn't ask my name, didn't check anything. Just told me I didn't belong. Darren glanced at Elijah's clothes. I'm sure it was just a misunderstanding. Security's had a few incidents lately. They've been asked to be extra cautious. Cautious of what? Sterling asked, arms crossed. Guys in hoodies with confirmed appointments? No one's accusing anyone of anything, Darren said, attempting a wider smile. Let's all just calm down. We are calm, Elijah replied. You're the one sweating. But the real pressure hadn't even begun, and when it came it wouldn't be loud. It would be sharp and permanent. Darren continued, trying to manage the situation like someone mopping up water while the faucet ran. If there was any miscommunication, he said, gesturing towards the front desk, we'll address it. I'm happy to personally assist you, Mr. Ransom. Elijah wasn't interested in his help, not now. He looked around, taking in the polished floors, the ceiling-high windows, the marble-topped reception counter that screamed, we only cater to a certain kind of customer. It didn't feel like a place where memories were made. It felt like a place where people calculated your worth the second you walked in. Braden leaned towards Elijah. We can walk out right now and call someone who actually cares. Elijah nodded slowly. Yeah, he said, we're done here. Darren, already rattled, tried to salvage the moment. Wait, Mr. Ransom, I'll throw in a service package. Top tier, 3 years. Elijah looked at him. You think this is about floor mats and oil changes? No, of course not. I'd hate for this to escalate into something it doesn't need to be. Braden chuckled, low and cold. What do you think this is going to escalate into? Darren backed off slightly. I'm just saying we don't want this to go public. Now it made sense. Darren wasn't worried about Elijah. He was worried about optics. Elijah exhaled slowly. You've got a bigger problem than this going public, he said. You've got a culture issue. People here judge before they even speak. Darren's jaw twitched. I'll speak with the guards. They'll be disciplined. Not your call anymore, Derek cut in. Someone else will be having that conversation. The 5 men turned and walked towards the exit. The quiet behind them spoke louder than any argument. Back at the truck, Elijah didn't start the engine right away. He just sat there, jaw clenched, hands in his lap. I didn't want to have to call you guys for this, he said. We didn't show up for this dealership, Derek replied. We showed up for you. That hit Elijah harder than anything that happened inside. He leaned back, thumbed the scar on his left wrist, a souvenir from Kandahar. There's a reason I don't lose it in moments like that. Because I've seen real chaos. I've seen men scream for their mothers while bleeding out in places nobody can find on a map. Sterling was quiet for a moment, then said, That's exactly why they're afraid of you. What do you mean? You don't come in yelling. You come in steady, controlled. People like that, they don't know what to do with someone who doesn't need to prove himself. Alonso checked his phone. I've got a friend in Santa Monica. Runs a private luxury dealership, family-owned, no pretenses. You want to take a drive? Elijah didn't answer at first. He was looking out the window at the dealership. Lucas was staring at them through the glass, his expression unreadable. Then Elijah turned the key in the ignition. Let's go. But before they left the lot, Derek made a call, and the ripple effect of that moment would reach farther than anyone in that building ever expected. Derek's call didn't go to voicemail. It never did, not with her. Colonel Winters, a voice answered on the first ring, sharp, no nonsense. It's Fallon, Derek said. We've got a situation. Need a few eyes on a private dealership in Thousand Oaks. Name's Westlake European Motors. There was a pause, then the sound of typing. Who's involved? Elijah Ransom. Another pause, shorter this time. Understood. Give me 20 minutes. Derek hung up and didn't say a word. None of them needed to ask what was coming next. They had all served under Winters. She wasn't flashy, she wasn't loud, but when she moved, things happened. As the Escalade pulled out of the lot, Elijah followed in his truck. The silence between the two vehicles wasn't awkward. It was practiced, a quiet that came with men who had fought together, lost together, and buried more than they wanted to remember. The drive to Santa Monica was smooth, just under an hour. They didn't speak much. Music was off. Thoughts were louder. When they arrived, Alonzo pointed to a modest glass-front showroom tucked between a surf shop and a vegan cafe. The sign read Monarch Motor House in matte silver letters. Sleek but unpretentious. They walked in. The man behind the desk was in his late 50s, sun-worn face, gray stubble, sleeves rolled up like he'd just emerged from under a car. He looked up and smiled with his eyes. Elijah Ransom, he said, standing. You've got some friends who really believe in you. Elijah raised an eyebrow. I'm Gabe Navarro, the man said, shaking his hand. We served at different times, but I knew who you were the moment Alonzo called. Said you were trying to surprise your wife. Elijah smiled for the first time that day. I've got just the thing, Gabe said. Follow me. They walked past polished Teslas and dark blue Bentleys until they reached the back of the showroom. There, under a soft light, sat the Maserati, the same model, same white, even the interior was right. She's yours if you want her, Gabe said. And no one's asking what you're wearing. Elijah laughed, genuinely now. What's the catch? No catch. You pay what we discussed over the phone. We deliver it by 5, ribbon and all. Only thing I ask, when she sees it, you tell her the truth. Tell her the story. It matters. Elijah nodded slowly. Yeah, it does. Back in Thousand Oaks, Colonel Winters was already in motion. She had no official title anymore, no badge to flash, but power doesn't always come in the form of a uniform. Sometimes it's a phone book full of people who still answer when you call because your reputation means something. By 4:15 p.m., the regional manager of Westlake's parent company received a flagged report. 2 guards at a dealership had forcibly removed a former Marine with a confirmed appointment. The report didn't use angry language. It didn't threaten lawsuits. It just asked, are these your standards? By 4:30, the dealership owner was on the phone with Darren, his voice cold and clipped. What the hell happened over there? Darren fumbled through excuses. It was a misunderstanding. Security made the call. You're the floor manager, which means the buck stops with you. Darren went quiet, but silence wouldn't save his job, and it wouldn't erase what those cameras had already captured. The sun was beginning to set behind the hills when a black Suburban rolled into the dealership lot and parked in the fire lane. No plates, tinted windows. Nobody in the showroom moved. Then the door opened and a woman stepped out. Late 40s, slender frame, sharp-cut blazer, gray in her hair, but her walk didn't waver. She carried herself like someone who didn't waste time asking for permission. Colonel Rebecca Winters. She entered the dealership like she'd been there 100 times. The receptionist stood up, uncertain whether to greet or warn. Is Darren here? Winters asked, her voice calm. The receptionist nodded slowly. I think so. Let me. Don't worry, Winters said. He knows I'm coming. She walked straight past her, heels clicking once for every step. Elijah's old team wasn't with her. She didn't need backup. He was the backup. In the sales office, Darren was already standing when she walked in. Lucas sat beside him, looking like he wished he could vanish through the leather chair. You're Rebecca Winters, Darren said, trying to offer a handshake. She didn't take it. I'm not here for introductions, she replied. I'm here to make sure this doesn't happen again. Darren cleared his throat. We've reviewed the footage. I assure you, I don't need footage. I spoke to the man, and I've known him longer than you've had this job. Lucas opened his mouth as if to speak, then stopped himself. Winters dropped a printed sheet on Darren's desk. It was a copy of Elijah's appointment confirmation. He had every right to be here. He came to spend money. He left humiliated. So you tell me what part of that is acceptable? We're addressing it, Darren said. I've already written up the guards. You don't get it, Winters said, shaking her head. This wasn't about 2 guards. This was about a system you either created or allowed. Darren's cheeks flushed. We can't control what every employee does. But you can control how you respond. So far your response is weak. Lucas suddenly said. He didn't look like the kind of person who'd be buying a Maserati. The room fell silent. Darren turned to him, eyes wide. Winters just stared. Exactly, she said. She stood, straightened her jacket. Here's how this is going to go. You're going to issue a formal apology not just to Mr. Ransom but publicly. You're going to review your access policies and the guards. They're not suspended. They're fired today. Darren stammered. You don't have authority to fire people. She walked to the door and paused. No, I don't. But I know 5 people who sit on your dealership's board. One of them is my sister. She left without another word. Back in Santa Monica, the Maserati was already being loaded onto a flatbed truck. Gabe handed Elijah a crisp white envelope with a note inside. Some things can't be fixed, but they can be answered. Gian. Elijah smiled at that. He didn't want revenge, he just wanted peace. But sometimes, peace only comes when people are forced to look in the mirror they've been avoiding. His phone buzzed. It was Jada. Hey, she said, you still at the store? Elijah glanced at the truck pulling away with her future car strapped tight. Yeah, he said. I'll be home soon. But she had no idea what was rolling towards her and what it would come to represent. By the next morning, the apology letter was posted, buried in a tiny corner of the dealership's website under company updates. No mention of Elijah's name, no ownership, just vague phrases like, we regret any inconvenience, and we're reviewing our internal procedures. It was meant to be the end of it, a band-aid on a deeper wound. But Darren had underestimated the power of people. That same morning, one of the dealership's employees, someone who had witnessed what happened but remained silent, sent a copy of the security footage to a local journalist. No headlines, just the raw file and a short note. This is how they treat paying customers. The video was short, just under a minute. It showed Elijah arriving, the 2 guards stepping in front of him, the dismissal, him holding up his phone then walking away. No confrontation, no raised voices, just a man turned away without cause. Within hours the clip went viral. It wasn't loud, it didn't scream, but it said everything it needed to say. By noon, news vans were circling the dealership's lot. Darren paced inside, sweat gathering at his collar. Lucas sat at his desk, refreshing his phone every 3 seconds. I told you, Darren, he hissed. I told you we needed to own it. That letter. Now we look like we're hiding. Lucas didn't say a word. He knew he'd made it worse, especially when a screenshot surfaced. An internal group chat from a few staff members mocking Elijah's boots, his truck, even his name. Darren saw the writing on the wall. They're gonna cut me loose. Lucas glanced up. You think? No, I know. I'm not salvageable after this. I'm the face of it. That same afternoon, Elijah sat on the back porch with Jada. The Maserati was parked in the driveway. The ribbon had already been taken off, folded, and saved. Jada was sentimental like that. She had cried when she saw it, not just because of the car but because of what it took to bring it home. Now, with her head on Elijah's shoulder, she asked softly, Are you okay? I'm tired, he said. From the drive. From the reminders. She didn't ask what he meant, she knew. They had spent years thinking they had moved beyond being looked at sideways, being followed through aisles, being asked twice for ID when everyone else was asked once. They thought their achievements had built a wall around them, but that dealership visit had knocked a hole right through it. I almost didn't call Derek, Elijah said. I almost just came home. Why didn't you? He took a long breath. Because part of me still wants the world to change. And I knew if I came home and stayed quiet, nothing would. Jada squeezed his hand. Later that evening, Colonel Winters received a call, not from the dealership, but from the parent company's CEO, an older man with a polished voice and a nervous laugh. He didn't call to defend the staff, he called to ask questions. "What should we do?" he asked. Winters didn't sugarcoat it. "Start over. Replace the people who treat appointments like auditions, and stop hiring managers who only react after the headlines hit." He hesitated. "Do you think the story will fade?" "No," she said, "because this wasn't a story. It was a reminder." But what no one realized yet was that the reminder wasn't just for the dealership. It was for anyone who believed silence would keep them safe. The footage kept spreading not just through local news but across national outlets. Commentary shows picked it up, forums debated every frame. People weren't just reacting to what happened. They were reacting to how calmly Elijah handled it. The way he stood there, the way he didn't raise his voice. That composure hit a nerve. A retired judge in Sacramento reposted the video, captioning it, "Dignity under pressure reveals the truth about power." By Thursday morning, the name Elijah Ransom was trending. Not because he asked for attention but because people gave it to him anyway. The dealership chain's headquarters in Dallas called an emergency meeting. The CEO, a tall man whose face had aged 10 years in a day, opened the call bluntly. "This is no longer a PR issue. It's a company reckoning." 3 executives were tasked with internal damage control. That same afternoon they flew to California. When they arrived at Westlake European Motors, they didn't park, they didn't shake hands. They walked through the showroom and went straight to Darren's office. Inside, Darren stood before them like a student called to the principal's office. One of the executives, a woman in her 50s named Andrea Langley, didn't waste a second. "You were given trust. You broke it." "I've already drafted a second apology," Darren began, "a better one with names, full accountability." Andrea held up her hand. "Darren," she said evenly, "you're done." He blinked. "Wait, no, please, at least let me." "We saw the footage. We saw the chat logs. This isn't a mistake, it's a culture and you either encouraged it or ignored it." Lucas stood up from his chair across the office. "What about me?" Another executive spoke this time. "You'll remain on payroll for now but expect a review. Full investigation." The mood was ice cold, not because they were angry but because now their names were on the line too. The company had investors, brand partners and high-profile clients. None of them liked heat. That evening, the dealership signage was quietly covered with black tarp. Their website's entire team page disappeared. Meanwhile, across town, Elijah's phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. He answered cautiously. "Ransom, this is Reverend Miles Owens," the voice said. "You don't know me, but I run a community center in East Pasadena. We work with returning vets, help them transition back into civilian life. You've inspired a lot of them this week." Elijah didn't know what to say. Reverend Owens continued, "I don't mean to interrupt your piece, but if you ever wanted to come speak to our guys, the door's open." "I'll think about it," Elijah said quietly. "You're not just a man in a video," the Reverend added. "You're a mirror and they're seeing themselves for the first time in a long time." Elijah thanked him, hung up. He sat on the porch again, same spot, same cool air pressing in around him. Jada came out with 2 mugs of tea, set one beside him and kissed the side of his head. "You're a little quieter tonight," she said. "Just tired." "You keep saying that." He paused. "Then because it keeps happening, Jay." Her eyes filled. She didn't need to ask what it meant. She just leaned her head against his shoulder and for a few minutes, they watched the wind bend the tree branches across the yard. But peace, however small, doesn't last long when your story starts to change other people's. The next day, Westlake European Motors reopened its doors quietly, without fanfare, no press releases, no marketing push. But nothing about it felt normal. The parking lot was half empty, the staff looked like they were holding their breath. Andrea Langley returned with a clipboard and a legal advisor. No press, no security detail, just a quiet cleanup in motion. The first order of business. Both guards had been let go, terminated contracts, no recommendation letters. One of them threatened to go to the press until he was shown the surveillance footage, the internal complaint log, and a statement from Colonel Winters confirming his behavior was patterned. Second, Darren was officially removed. His office was cleared out by 10 a.m., the nameplate pried off, his email disabled. Andrea had him sign 2 documents. an NDA and a voluntary resignation form. He didn't argue. There was nothing left to argue for. Back in Santa Monica, Elijah returned to Monarch Motor House, not to complain, but to thank Gabe Navarro in person. Gabe met him in the service bay, sleeves rolled up again, hands stained from grease and polish. "You didn't have to come back," Gabe said. "I owed you face-to-face gratitude," Elijah replied. Gabe handed him a folder. Inside was a hand-signed certificate for free annual detailing, 5 years' worth. "You think I won't be retired by then?" Elijah joked. "Then give it to someone else who needs it. Someone who hasn't been reminded lately that they're welcome in places like this." That hit Elijah deep. He paused. "You ever feel like you're just done?" Gabe wiped his hands and leaned against the workbench. "Sometimes. But then something like this happens. Not the ugly part, the part after, and people start waking up." Elijah nodded slowly. "You think people really change?" Gabe tilted his head. "No. But people remember things they can't unsee. And if that memory stings enough, maybe they act different next time." That afternoon, Colonel Winters received a letter, handwritten, signed with initials only. It wasn't from Darren or Lucas or anyone else involved. It was from an intern at the dealership, a young woman who had only been there 3 weeks. "I saw what happened," the letter said. "I didn't stop it, but I wanted to, and now I will." Winters folded it carefully and slid it into her desk drawer. Not all redemption was loud. Some of it showed up in the smallest ways. Back at Elijah's house, Jada pulled a small envelope from her purse and handed it to him after dinner. "What's this?" he asked. "Open it." Inside was a photo of the two of them from years ago, his final deployment day. He looked younger, she looked scared but proud. She'd written in the corner, "You didn't fight for that car. You fought for every kid who's going to walk into a showroom after you and not be questioned." He didn't say anything, just stared at it. Jada leaned forward and whispered, "This wasn't just about us." He knew she was right, but he didn't yet realize that the story wasn't just being shared. It was being taught. 2 weeks later, Monarch Motor House delivered another car, not to Elijah, but to a young mother named Kendra Bryant in Oxnard. She'd just been hired as an EMT and had been taking 3 buses to work every day. Elijah had quietly arranged the transfer, paid in full, paperwork signed in her name. Kendra never met him. The dealership only told her it came from someone who believes in paying things forward. Elijah didn't want recognition. He wanted continuity, quiet changes that reached farther than hashtags or headlines. At home, the Maserati was no longer parked in the driveway with fanfare. It had already seen grocery runs, a weekend trip to Big Bear, and a few fingerprints on the passenger door from the neighbor's kids. That's how Elijah liked it. The car wasn't a trophy, it was part of life now. And Jada? She loved it not because of the engine or the sleek paint, but because of what it had taken to bring it home. One evening she asked, "Do you regret not staying silent?" He shook his head. "I regret not asking sooner how many times other people went through the same thing and just walked away." "You did more than buy a car," she said. "You showed people how to answer with grace." Grace. Elijah repeated, testing the word like it was foreign. "Not sure I'd call it that." "I would." That night, Elijah opened his inbox. Dozens of messages. From veterans, from strangers, from business owners who'd changed hiring practices after seeing his story. One from a dealership in Portland wrote, "We've implemented anonymous walk-in tests to monitor how our team treats people based on appearance. Your story started that." He didn't reply to most of them, but he read every word. That weekend, Elijah visited the East Pasadena Community Center Reverend Owens had mentioned. No cameras, no social media posts. Just a folding chair, a circle of men and stories. He told his own, but only after listening to theirs. One young man, barely 23, said, "I used to think silence was safe. But it's just heavy. It piles on you until it feels normal." Elijah leaned forward. "You're right. Speaking up doesn't always fix the system, but it lets people know they're not invisible." There was silence then, but not the empty kind, the kind that holds meaning. Later, as he walked back to his truck, a teen from the center followed him out. "Mr. Ransom," he called, running to catch up. "You think I could ever make it? Marines, I mean." Elijah looked him over. Skinny build, bright eyes, wore self-doubt like a second shirt. "You show up. You do the work. And you don't let the world tell you who you are." The kid grinned, nodded, and walked off with his shoulders straighter than when he arrived. But what Elijah didn't say, what he rarely said, is that moments like that were the reason he kept going. It had been nearly a month since that Tuesday afternoon at Westlake European Motors. The media had moved on, the headlines had quieted, but the story kept echoing, just in quieter rooms now. A high school civics teacher in Ventura used it in class. A diversity officer at a private firm referenced it in a training. A car dealership in Tucson rewrote their customer intake policy after watching the footage. Elijah never chased those outcomes. He wasn't trying to change the world. But sometimes, the most powerful voices are the ones that speak quietly and refuse to be moved. One night, sitting with Derek, Alonzo, Braden, and Sterling in Elijah's backyard, the five of them traded old stories over drinks and grilled meat. They laughed, talked trash, remembered names they hadn't said aloud in years. At one point, Sterling said, "Crazy how one moment, just a regular day, can end up meaning something bigger." Elijah shrugged. "I didn't plan it. I just didn't want to walk away and feel small." "You didn't," Derek said. "You walked away and built something bigger than pride." Braden raised his glass. "To walking away the right way." They clinked glasses, 5 hands meeting in a circle of shared history. As the fire pit crackled, Elijah sat back in his chair, hands resting on his stomach. He wasn't angry anymore. He wasn't bitter. What he felt was something else, something steadier, responsibility. Because the truth is, people watch even when you don't realize it. Even when you're just trying to get through the day without drawing attention, people watch. And when they see strength wrapped in calm and pain met with restraint, it makes them ask questions about how they'd respond. That's where change begins. Not with outrage, but with reflection. Not with noise, but with action. Elijah didn't need to stand in front of microphones. He didn't need to post about it. What mattered was what came next. The conversations it sparked, the policies rewritten, the people who saw themselves in him and finally felt seen. Sometimes, the most radical thing you can do in a loud world is to stay composed, to choose dignity over rage, to walk out quietly and still be remembered. So if you're watching this, if you've ever felt invisible, underestimated, or dismissed, remember Elijah Ransom. Not because he fought back, but because he stood still and let the truth speak for itself. And maybe when it's your turn, you'll do the same. If this story moved you, share it, talk about it, don't let it fade. And subscribe for more true stories that matter. Not just to entertain, but to remind us of who we can choose to be.